I asked, swiveling swiftly to lock eyes with my spouse Carol. What was that you just said? I probed, finding it hard to accept what I thought I'd heard. Dan, I get that this might upset you, but I'm feeling unhappy at the moment and am considering taking some time apart to reflect and figure out what I really want. Carol elaborated as I was outside, tending to the steaks on the grill. My friend Karen has a spare room and she's let me stay with her temporarily. When exactly did you plan on letting me? No, Carol? Or were you going to leave me a note on my pillow instead? I demanded, raising my voice more than was necessary. Please don't raise your voice, Dan. I'd rather Andy didn't catch wind of this discussion, she cautioned, referring to our 6-year-old son. I foresaw you might take it this way, which is why I've been reluctant to bring it up until now. So, you've made up your mind to leave. Should I be the one to break it to Andy, or will you? After you've gone, I posed the question sarcastically. I'll sit him down and talk to him myself tonight before he goes to bed, she assured. This isn't the end, you realize. Agreeing to move in with Karen, I suppose I should have seen it coming, I noted, growing more and more aggravated. I'll get the papers ready tomorrow. You can review and sign them, and I'll have them filed with the court by Wednesday. Carol, what papers? She inquired. Since you're moving out, I want our separation to be legally recognized. That way, if you decide not to come back, it'll automatically transition into a divorce, I clarified. It avoids having to go through the process twice. I'm not after a divorce, Dan, just a bit of space to ponder some things, that's all, dear Carol countered. Carol, I retorted sharply, I've been asking to talk for the last 4 months, but you've been too caught up with Karen and your other friends to make time. Now you're choosing to move in with Karen, to chase after what you've probably wanted for the last 6 months. I raised my voice, but not with my blessing, nor will I stand by and be humiliated by you or anyone, I declared, slamming the grill lid shut. This argument was not what Carol had expected. She knew Dan would be upset, but she thought she could convince him that the separation would be for the best. However, things had escalated. Dan, please, was all Carol could say before he walked away in anger, leaving her to manage the grill. She removed the steaks from the grill and placed them on a tray, then went to look for him. She found Dan in their bedroom, angrily moving all her stuff into the guest room. Take your stuff and go. We're finished, I shouted at her. I'll send the papers to your office. Sign them and give them back to Keith, the lawyer Dan had been using for the past 6 years. Don't worry, I'll take Andy out to eat, so he doesn't have to see his mom leaving, I announced, picking up my coat and son and making for my car. Karen, it's Carol, she started. Dan didn't take it well, and now he's talking about divorce. Carol shared, her distress evident. I warned you he might not react well, but he'll come around, so hang in there. Karen consoled her on the call. Eventually, he'll ask you to come back, and that's when you'll have leverage. I hope you're right, Karen, because at the moment he seems intent on pushing me out and starting divorce proceedings, she admitted reluctantly. I need a break, but I don't want to end our marriage, Carol confided. I'll be right over to help you with your things, Karen assured her that the quicker she got out, and on her own, the sooner she could figure out what she truly wanted. Following that, Karen came by and helped Carol pack up most of her stuff, and they were gone before Dan and Andy got back. This scenario had been in my predictions for quite some time. Carol and I, both accountants, had originally met 8 years ago while auditing a firm that had declared Chapter 7 bankruptcy. Every one of us was associated with a distinct financial institution, each holding a stake in the company undergoing bankruptcy. Our collaboration led to shared dinners nearly every night. Completing the audit required a whole week, during which we found great joy in each other's presence. Carol stood at 5 feet 6 inches, her hair a shade of brown, and she weighed roughly 175 pounds. She possessed an attractive visage but was a bit over the healthy weight. Dan, standing at 5 feet 8 inches and tipping the scales at about 195 pounds, had already developed a stomach from his frequent dining out, despite being only 22. These two geeks were a match made in heaven. 4 months later, we exchanged vows, and Carol was expecting by the 8th month following our wedding. Carol faced a challenging pregnancy, restricted to bed rest for the latter 5 months, leading to a considerable weight gain. When Andy was born, she had reached close to 250 pounds. Yet, I never broached the subject. My love for her was unconditional, regardless of her physical appearance. Our family was harmonious until Carol caught wind of her colleagues speaking about her. "She's really attractive," remarked one woman to another. "It's just unfortunate she's as big as a house." "Do you think she gets her attire custom-made at Omar's, the tent-maker's boutique?" She chuckled heartily. They might have been amused, but Carol was far from it. Carol found herself in tears in the restroom when Karen entered. "What's wrong, Carol?" she asked. "I'm perceived as obese by everyone," Carol lamented through her tears. "They'd be more understanding about my weight loss struggles if they knew the reality," she cried. "Listen, all it takes is a good diet plan and a gym membership," Karen advised. "Beneath all that weight, you're a stunning woman. Just make up your mind and go for it." That's precisely what Carol did. I arranged a fantastic gym membership deal through my account management role, and we signed up the next week. The gym had a daycare, allowing us to bring Andy along for our post-work sessions. Carol, showing immense dedication, worked out 6 days a week, whereas I managed around 3 times. When the weight loss wasn't immediate, Carol saw a doctor and started on diet pills. I had my reservations, but her determination was unwavering. 8 months on, Carol had slimmed down to 125 pounds and looked phenomenal. She revamped her wardrobe, and her transformation didn't go unnoticed at her job, especially by the male colleagues. That's when complications arose. The issue escalated at Carol's office Christmas celebration. Carol chose a rather provocative outfit, drawing ample attention from her male co-workers. She relished the attention. Caught under the mistletoe, she shared kisses with numerous men until I stepped in to cease it. Carol, slightly tipsy, seemed oblivious to the inappropriate touches as they kissed her. I escorted her out, stating our imminent departure. She resisted, causing a scene. "We're leaving now, with or without you," I sternly stated. She complied, albeit reluctantly. Our drive home was filled with a heated debate. "You acted quite disrespectfully tonight," I accused. "Witnessing those men handle you without intervention," I protested. "It was merely playful fun," she defended, but I disagreed. "How would you feel seeing me with another woman, engaging in kisses and touches?" I challenged, though her inebriated state clouded any judgment. Carol got sick later that night, luckily changing out of her attire before getting sick. She looked terrible the following day and offered her apologies, vowing such an incident wouldn't repeat. Yet it happened again, only I wasn't present. Carol started attending a weekly ladies' night out. A group of 7, married and single alike, would unwind at Tony's bar post-work. Initially, she'd be home by 6:30, but soon it shifted to 7:30 and eventually almost 9 p.m. By the time Carol made it back to the house, Andy had already fallen asleep, and my mood was sour. In the early days of our marriage, our sexual encounters were passionate and frequent, as if we were teenagers unable to satisfy our desires. Over time, however, engaging in sexual activities once a week seemed to become the norm. It was evident, though, that Carol always returned home on Wednesday evenings filled with enthusiasm, and this evening was no exception. Initially, our experience in the bedroom was limited, and we were both reluctant to explore new territories. We gradually discovered each other's likes and dislikes, and, with the help of some adult films, broadened our sexual horizons. Yet with every return, Carol seemed keen to introduce new and exciting experiences, leaving me curious about the source of her ideas. Initially, Carol struggled with performing oral sex, though any attempt was appreciated more than none. This night, she emerged from the bathroom naked, asking, "Where's my hunk?" She had indulged in a few drinks and arrived later than usual, but knew exactly how to lift my spirits. She approached from the bed's end, removed my boxers, and performed the most skilled oral sex. As I flipped her over, already stimulated, and began to reciprocate, she stopped me. "Just take me tonight, Han. I desire the most incredible sex from you," she voiced. I endeavored to perform my best, aiming to delay my climax. My thoughts wandered to various distractions to extend my performance before finally reaching climax. Carol seemed to enjoy it immensely, proclaiming the proposal intriguing but expressing satisfaction with her current situation. I fulfilled her wish, releasing my warmth inside her as she fell onto the bed. "Damn, that was needed," she expressed, adding with a laugh I might feel sore for a while as she lay on her back. I moved closer, kissed her, and shared my happiness in being her husband. This was our life until this week. Following dinner, Andy and I found ourselves in an empty house. Where could Karen be, I wondered. Since Carol lost weight, Karen has been encouraging her to engage in various activities. It's no surprise her husband left. She's been nothing but a problem and now seems to be influencing my wife as well. I got Andy ready for bed, tucked him in, and told him a story. When he asked about his mother, I reassured him Mommy is on a trip and will be back soon. Though I wasn't convinced myself. I went downstairs, called my mother, and filled her in. "Mom, could you watch Andy during the day until I figure things out?" I requested. "Darling, Carol will come to her senses and return by the end of the week. She's too attached to Andy to stay away for long," my mother comforted me, offering to help with Andy before I went to work. I hoped she was right, yet I couldn't share her optimism. On Monday, I reached out to Keith to discuss Carol's departure. I need to make sure I'm protected, including securing full custody of Andy. I propose an agreement where if one of us acts in a way unbecoming of a married person, the other gets a 65/35% division of the assets. I suspect she might cheat, and I have to safeguard myself, I explained. I'm asking for a 60-day period before it escalates to a divorce. "Can you have it ready by tomorrow?" I urged. "Don't you think you're rushing things, Dan? She just left, and you're already preparing for divorce," he remarked. "I believe Carol has been planning this, and maybe this will wake her up to reality. Otherwise, I'm not willing to lose everything I've built because she wants to explore with someone else," I stated. "Fine, Dan, I'll get it done today and have the papers delivered to her at work tomorrow." "Anything else?" Keith asked. "No, that's it for now. It's important she understands the consequences. Also, Keith, there are 2 more contracts to draft, but we can address those later. I'll send the details by the end of the week," I said. As Carol arrived at her job on Tuesday, she felt melancholic, missing Dan and Andy more than she had in the past 8 years. After her lunch break, she received information that a gentleman was waiting in her office. "Are you Carol Spencer?" he questioned. "Indeed, I am Carol. What can I do for you?" she replied. "Consider yourself officially served," he announced, presenting her with a manila envelope. Carol dedicated, but some time to pore over the separation terms and division of assets outlined in the decree, which bore a resemblance to a divorce settlement. It awarded Dan temporary yet complete custody of Andy, with Carol being allowed visitation rights provided she gave sufficient notice. By the end of her review, she was feeling more hurt than angry. "I step out for a couple of days, and Dan decides our marriage is over," she reflected. She tried reaching out to Dan, but was informed by his secretary that he was not available for the rest of the day, and her calls to his mobile phone were diverted directly to voicemail. At that same time, Dan was busy changing the locks at home, separating their bank accounts, and excising Carol's name from both his insurance policies and retirement plan. By 4 p.m., I had wrapped up all my tasks and turned my phone back on. 12 messages from Carol I observed silently and deleted them without listening. Dinner was at my mother's house with Andy, where I shared what I had done. "Carol is going to be furious," I admitted. "Dan, I'd feel the same way if I were in her shoes," she said. "What's your end goal with all of this?" she asked. "To the very end, Mum," I answered. "I can't fix our marriage by myself, particularly when she ignores advice. So I've taken it a step further. She started this mess, but I'm determined to end it if it turns out she's been unfaithful. I used to trust her, but now I can't trust a word she says. Right now, I'm protecting my son and myself. If things get resolved, great. If not, I'm ready to go it alone, son. I've never seen this side of you. Make a note to never cross you," my mum said with a laugh. Carol attempted to enter her house, trying her key in the lock. "What the heck?" she whispered to herself, before realizing the lock had been changed. "Damn him," she cursed under her breath. then took out her phone to call Dan again. As before, her call was directed to voicemail, where she left another message. Now, everything is in place, I thought, going through my checklist. Now, it was just a matter of waiting. Carol showed up at Dan's office the next Wednesday morning. My credit cards have been declined, and when I went to pick up my prescription on my way here, they told me I no longer have insurance coverage. Do you really hate me that much? Dan, I'm merely being cautious, Carol explained. Remember, you were the one who walked out. I will take care of our household expenses and Andy's, but from now on, you're on your own financially. This should prevent any financial disputes between us. Dan, you're making things worse, Carol said, raising her voice. I just needed a little room to breathe, that's all. Bending over my desk, I responded with a firm, detached voice. Carol, do you think I'm naive? I may not be the sharpest tool in the shed, but I'm not clueless. Karen has you so turned around. You're completely lost. You believe you can act single without any consequences? Think again. The instant I find out you've violated our marriage vows, we're done. You've probably already done so, hence I'm puzzled why we're even having this conversation. I'm so angry with you right now I can hardly see clearly. So it's best you leave before I say something that irreparably damages what remains of our relationship. I finished and took a seat. Carol was taken aback and filled with rage. You have no right to treat me as though I'm a child. I am your partner in this marriage, so enough with you, she snapped back. Well, it seems that hasn't been much of the case lately, but I suppose now you're finding satisfaction elsewhere, I stated, just loud enough for Carol to overhear. With that, she left in a huff. I knew she hadn't actually been unfaithful, but had come dangerously close. About a month prior, I started having her monitored on Wednesdays. There was some harmless flirting, nothing more. Aware that she was probably staying with Karen, I wanted to make the consequences of infidelity clear to Carol. Yet, my own world was unraveling. The initial weeks were tough. Carol made it a point to visit Andy, but hardly exchanged words with me. I kept her under surveillance, yet nothing noteworthy occurred. Her interactions with Karen and their circle expanded, from initially only on Wednesdays to now engaging socially at least 4 times a week. It appeared as though there was an effort to make up for time not spent. Seems like someone is trying to make up for lost time, I quietly commented to myself while perusing the report. However, I successfully located a caregiver for Andy, a recent college graduate named Beth, who was encountering difficulties securing full-time work. Beth, 23, featured blonde hair, stood at 5', and had a slim figure. Despite holding a degree, she was limited to part-time jobs. Seeing my job posting for a babysitter, she jumped at the chance, coming from a big family and proficient in handling young boys. Due to her experience with 2 younger brothers, Beth was a perfect fit. We settled on her pay and schedule, and she moved in the following day. Beth worked as a waitress at a reasonably priced family restaurant on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday nights. We ate dinner together on her days off. Within weeks, Andy became quite fond of Beth, especially enjoying the bedtime stories she read to him. Beth, I really appreciate how much you're putting into this, especially now with his mum away. He needs as much normalcy as we can give, I said, smiling sincerely. I've been informed about the situation with you and your wife. Your mum filled me in, just in case Carol tried to take him. Beth revealed. It's hard to believe she would leave like that. Even though we haven't known each other long, you're one of the most caring men I've met, and your love for Andy is clear. Maybe Carol was confused about what really mattered, convinced by others that she had better options elsewhere, I replied. Anyway, this mess will be over in 40 days, and it can't come soon enough for me. I didn't expect that my life was on the verge of a major upheaval, with chaos to follow in less than a week. As it turns out, I was a silent partner in the accounting firm I worked for. Having brought in a significant amount of business in the last 2 years, I was awarded a 15% share in the partnership. I asked for this to be kept secret because I didn't want to be known as one of the owners. This secrecy allowed me to truly gauge the staff's view of the company and its leadership. A recent highlight was a meeting with an overseas clothing manufacturer with factories in 5 Asian countries. I had met the owners at an event about a year ago and discussed some ideas with them. Impressed, they scheduled a meeting the next week to consider our firm. Representing them, "We like the way your company operates. It seems you go above and beyond, providing that personal touch," said one of the prospective clients. Since each factory was operating independently, they sought someone to integrate a standardized system for centralized management from a global office. They were disappointed I wouldn't personally manage the international operations, but I committed to closely overseeing all procedures to ensure smooth operations. With the agreement signed and hands shaken, we began celebrating. It had taken 9 months to land this account, and I had hoped to share this joy with Carol. I envisioned taking her out to the best restaurant, then home to fully express my affection. But when I got home, I was met with its emptiness, reflecting my inner void. 20 minutes later, Beth arrived with Andy and some Chinese food. Bursting with news to share, I told Beth, "Cancel dinner plans, we're going out to celebrate tonight," I declared. "Put on your finest, because tonight is special. My bosses had arranged for us to dine at the city's premier restaurant at 8 p.m., with a limousine picking us up at 7:30 p.m., necessitating quick preparations. After getting myself ready, I told Beth I would take care of Andy, giving her more time. By 7:15, both Andy and I were dressed and ready to leave. That's when Beth appeared coming down the stairs. "I hope it's okay." "I had nothing chic to wear, so I opted for a dress of your wife's that seemed to fit well enough," she explained to me. Indeed, it fit her quite adequately. It clung to her smoothly, though it was a bit short for her since she stood significantly taller than Carol. "Does it look okay?" "You look incredible," Beth, I told her, awestruck, just as the doorbell rang. The trio of us made our way to the back of the limo, right as Carol happened to drive past our residence. What on earth, she could only say, catching sight of them boarding the spacious vehicle. Wondering what was unfolding, she made a U-turn to follow them. She watched as they alighted and walked into the restaurant. That cad taking them to the city's top restaurant, when he earlier claimed we couldn't afford it, she seethed. And who is that woman wearing my dress? The evening was delightful for us all. I became the night's center of attention, and we feasted to our fullest. It was Beth who noted the time and mentioned we should leave, with Andy showing signs of exhaustion, given the late hour. "You're right. We better go, or waking him for school will be a challenge," I agreed. I thanked everyone for the dinner, but as they congratulated me, their attention was drawn to Beth, not solely the men. Beth looked stunning tonight, and she caught the jealous stares of the women. Word had spread about Carol going off to discover herself, and it appeared Dan had swiftly moved on. They speculated silently. The return trip was quiet, with Andy falling asleep as soon as we got into the limo. I carried him to his room, removed his clothes and gently tucked him in, kissing his forehead softly. "Good night," I murmured. Then, still dressed in my tuxedo, I went downstairs to see Beth enjoying a glass of wine at the kitchen table. "I appreciate you including me tonight." "It wasn't necessary," she said, smiling. "Leaving you behind tonight wasn't an option." "Plus, I truly enjoy your company, Beth," I responded, getting myself a glass of wine. "I hope you weren't too bored tonight, spending it with a bunch of accountants. Quite the opposite. I never knew your line of work could be so engaging, and everyone seemed to really like you, me included," she commented, her smile faint. "You've made me feel welcomed, as if I'm part of your family, even though I'm just the nanny." My pulse quickened, and I silently cursed, hoping my attraction wasn't as evident as I hid it from Beth. It had been a while since I'd been close with a woman. My recent times with Carol felt uninspired as she appeared uninterested. I felt a pull towards Beth, but acknowledged my loyalty to Carol, deciding to stay faithful under any condition. The night was magical, filled with thoughts of what I longed for, yet aware that nothing could happen, much to my dismay. Under different circumstances maybe, but not these, so I need a cold shower and some sleep, I admitted, giving Beth a quick kiss on the cheek as she hugged me. At 2 a.m. I felt Beth slip into bed next to me. From her body heat, I knew she wore nothing. Before I could speak, she placed her finger on my lips. "I know tonight isn't right for anything more. I just want to be close to you," she murmured as she snuggled against me. I woke up alone the next morning. Downstairs, Beth was fully dressed, making breakfast for us. No words were exchanged. Carol was livid. Here I am, pondering over my future with Dan, and he's already replaced me. She slammed her hand down, voicing her anger. She confided in Karen, who consoled her with the reality that all husbands cheat, proposing they celebrate her new freedom instead. She had no desire to step out and enjoy herself this evening. Instead, she wished to converse with Dan, who was perpetually caught up in some never-ending conference. It was baffling how someone could be so perpetually busy. Carol and her companions convened again at Tony's, which, as per usual, was teeming with people. After savoring a few beverages, the majority of their group opted to return home, leaving only Carol and Karen behind. A duo of appealing men made efforts to catch their notice, and Karen quickly became engaged with one of them. The other led her onto the dance floor, and during a slow tune, she found herself enveloped in his arms. His tender fingers roamed over her as Carol found herself slowly succumbing to his allure. It had been a considerable while since she had been intimate with a man, and this one was not only exceptionally good-looking but also had a physique akin to that of an ancient Greek sculpture, and showed as much interest in her as she did in him. She didn't pull away when he kissed her amidst their dance, nor did she halt his advances as he escorted her to a more hidden section of the dance floor and pressed her against a wall. Yet she should have drawn the line when his hands ventured beneath her dress, fondled her breasts, and shifted her undergarments to caress her more privately. Indeed, she ought to have stopped him. More so because the detective Dan had hired was capturing every moment. They all ended up at Karen's residence, and although Carol found herself unclothed on the bed with him, she soon recognized her error. "I can't. I simply cannot proceed with this," she asserted. "I am still wedded, and in spite of everything I maintain love for my husband," she conveyed, despite his objections. Consequently, he adhered to her request and left her in solitude. That evening, Carol resorted to taking 2 frigid showers, one right after he departed her chamber, and another subsequent to achieving climax on her own twice. "It's time to organize my thoughts and behaviors," she contemplated the following day. However, her life was already on the brink of change, steering towards a less favorable direction. On my desktop, I scrutinized the images of Carol, with the final one illustrating all 4 making their way into Karen's dwelling. I forwarded these to my attorney, instructing him to draft the necessary paperwork but to hold off until Monday. "It appears she has chosen her path," I commented, disheartened, for I had harbored genuine aspirations of mending things with Carol, yet those aspirations were now extinguished. "I'll handle the Asian initiative on my own," I communicated to my bosses the subsequent day. "I am in need of a respite, and this project will afford me the opportunity to declutter my mind and realign my life," I elaborated to them. "Everything is set for the launch on the 12th, which falls a week from next Tuesday." "Are you prepared for that timeline?" they questioned. "Allow me a couple of days to sort through my personal affairs and secure an apartment to which I can forward my possessions," I replied. I had 2 more meetings scheduled for that day, and with any luck, I'd have everything in order by evening. I reassigned my current tasks to my team, arranged documents to bestow my mother with legal authority, and directed Keith to serve Carol the divorce papers the following Monday. By then I would be on my way overseas, unreachable, giving her the same abrupt notice she had provided me. That night I returned to what would no longer be my home upon my return from abroad, engulfed in sorrow. Carol and I had selected it together. It was a repository of numerous joyful memories, all destined to be forgotten. I remained especially quiet during dinner, causing Beth to question if she was at fault. "No, it's merely that I have a lot on my mind. We'll discuss it after Andy has gone to bed," I reassured her. By 10, silence enveloped the house, leaving us locked in a mutual gaze. Beth began the dialogue. "Is there something troubling you, Dan? In case it's about the incident the other night, I truly regret it and promise it won't happen again," she expressed to me. "Beth, it's not related to that incident. Do you recall the festivity the firm arranged in my honor a few weeks ago? I've decided to accept the foreign assignment on my own terms, and Andy and I will be setting off." First thing on Monday, I revealed to her, I have an important question for you, I continued, observing the onset of tears in Beth's eyes. Would you consider coming with us at once? Her sorrow transformed into happiness. Of course, she cried out, wrapping me in a hug. Do you have a current passport, Beth? I questioned. Yes, I renewed it last year for a trip with my college friends, she answered. Then we're all set. You'll have to pack by Saturday as we're shipping our stuff in advance. Just keep enough clothes for the weekend and the trip on Monday. You're welcome to tell your family and friends, although I'd rather Carol doesn't find out until we've taken off. I'm not entirely sure about the legality of taking Andy and leaving, but I'm going ahead with it anyway. Any questions can be handled after we get back, I told her. Later that night, I spoke with my mother, laying out the whole plan, including giving her my power of attorney. Carol will be in for a surprise on Monday with her, but I still intend to have the house put up for sale the following week. Keith will send the documents to Carol that I'm mailing. If she has questions, she should talk to Keith, I detailed. Are you sure about this decision, Dan? Don't you wish to make amends with her? My mother inquired. She has made her choice, and she can live with it, and whoever she wants, I answered. And Beth is going with you. She sought confirmation. The destination is uncertain, but she fills me with happiness and keeps me grounded. There's a chance I might truly have feelings for her, and that's all I'm willing to say, I declared. We'll come over Sunday evening so you can say goodbye to Andy, I planned. On Monday, when Carol tried to reach Dan, his employer reported he was involved in an urgent off-site project and would pass her message along. Curious about his whereabouts, she unsuccessfully attempted to contact him on his cell. Carol Spencer, a man asked. She affirmed. You are officially served, he stated, handing her an envelope. Now what she said, opening the envelope to find a brief message from Dan. It seems I've chosen. I wish you all the best, he signed off. Then she found the photographs. Oh, was her only word. She wondered how Dan got those pictures, thinking the rogue must have spied on me as she went through them. These were not the kind of photos one would want to see of their partner with someone else, yet she insisted, but I never had relations with him. I have to make him understand, she resolved. Gone? What do you mean, gone? She exclaimed. Dan has embarked on an international project for 4 to 5 months. He left with Andy early Monday, Dan's mother clarified to Carol. He has no right to take Andy abroad, especially not. Without me, she protested. I'll drag him to court. I'll ensure he gets imprisoned, she vowed. Carol, you should remember that Dan has full custody of Andy. You gave up that right when you left to find yourself, she was reminded. To say you've erred greatly is an understatement. You had a stable marriage, yet you sought more. Now, you have nothing, Dan's mother remarked. I've tried explaining to him that things aren't what they seem, Carol said, crying. I still love him and have been loyal, she persisted. He has to believe me. Carol, having seen the photos myself, I'd leave my spouse too if he acted as you did. I recommend drafting a letter to explain your side, and I'll make sure he gets it. In the meantime, think about hiring a lawyer, she recommended. Carol passionately argued that alcohol played a big role in her behavior, which she has since stopped, remaining loyal ever since her departure. I still love him and am awaiting his return, she affirmed. Dan was straightforward in his communication. Carol, ever since you shed all those pounds last year, your behavior towards me changed. You seemed to think you were better than me. The attention you received from other men was something you relished, making me feel used. On the Wednesdays you came back home, you sought physical closeness rather than a genuine emotional bond with me. It felt as if I no longer attracted you. Now, you and Karen have my blessing to proceed. As you wish. I had forewarned you about Karen's potential to drive a wedge between us, yet you remained assured. Indeed, Andy, Beth, and myself are embarking on a new beginning, grounded in love and trust. You're free to visit Andy via video call. Just get it arranged on your computer. Please sign the papers because Mum plans to sell the house this week. Any hopes of us getting back together are in vain, so please don't hold on to them. I trust you'll find what you've been looking for, conveyed Dan. Carol realized her mistake in listening to her friends, who professed to know it all. This, I suspect, is why their own marriages didn't last. She decided to fight it until Dan's letter arrived. after which she signed the papers. Interestingly, 6 months later, Carol had gained back the 175 pounds she was 2 years before, yet Dan was out of the picture. Nevertheless, I felt at peace. Despite the challenge presented by the language difference at work, I managed to navigate through it. Andy started to pick up words gradually and was able to communicate effectively with the children he met. Beth assumed the role of planning our free time, choosing sites to visit and activities to partake in. I vividly remember one evening, a few months after we arrived, feeling a bit uneasy. Andy didn't want to sleep, my project was not progressing well, and Beth was feeling overwhelmed. She came into the study, kissed me on the back of the neck, bringing a smile to my face. She then took my hand and led me to our bedroom, where candles were lit on either side of our bed. We undressed each other and got into bed. That night, everything felt right. For the first time, we made love tenderly. In the months that followed, we explored each other's desires, avoiding anything that brought discomfort or involved farm animals. We were completely satisfied. 5 months on, my mother met us at the airport, overjoyed to see us all, especially Andy. During the ride home, she kept looking at Beth, who seemed very happy. "What's the news?" she asked. Beth, caught off guard, answered, 3 months pregnant. "How could you tell?" "I'm barely showing you both look." Excessively happy, like a cat that's gotten into the cream, she remarked. 2 weeks later, we were married, and 6 months after, Rhonda was born. When Beth mentioned wanting to join a gym to lose the baby weight, I was surprised. 2 days later, I surprised her by hiring a personal trainer for her, complete with all the necessary equipment. I saw no need to go through all that again. Dear listeners, I encourage you to express your opinions in the comments below. Also, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.